What's up, everybody? It's me, Stevie, Supersmallchibiwolf, Supersmallchibiwolf. This is going on both channels, and today I'm going to be talking about why Mario Kart World will always be in the shadow of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. So let's get into this. So the first thing I want to talk about is when it comes down to gaming, one thing that I love is a fun challenge. But when that challenge is mixed with overwhelming features that kills the experience and it loses its charm, then overall the game just seems to lack compared to previous titles. And when it comes down to Mario Kart World, they have increased the player count to 23 or 24, something like that, which should, I think that should have been a side mode. New experimental things like that, like trying to change the usual formula. I think that should be left for the side stuff and leave the main game for people who, the classics, the veterans, the people who have been playing for years, over, 20 plus years and stuff, So when they included, like, for example, more than the usual amount of players in this game, that's one thing that really, you know what I mean? It's like overwhelming, like just so much, like imagine playing a pinball machine, right? You having fun, you got maybe the max 6 balls to deal with. Imagine like constantly trying to deal with 50 balls in one small cabinet of a pinball machine. It's going to be overwhelming and annoying, you know what I mean? That's basically how it feels, you know what I mean? They had a formula that worked. It worked for, 30 plus years. And here we are with the new Mario Kart World Tour, and they kind of just, they try something new. And I think if it was like a side mode, then I would be like, you know what? That's understandable. That's cool. Okay, fine. That's a side mode. A little happy, thing people could do if they're interested. There you go. But when that's like the main mode and that's how the game is, you know what I mean? Yeah, that just kind of kills it. It's like, hey, wait a minute. You have this wonderful formula. You messed up. You messed around with it trying to be cool or whatever, and then it just didn't hit well. You know what I mean? I think it would have worked perfectly if that was a side mode. Like I said, for people who's into that, boom, there you go. But always keep the classic formula there because that's what made the games successful throughout the years. So that's one thing that I wanted to say, There's a special charm and limitations, and this is a perfect example of it, you know what I mean? Like the pinball example, it's going to get messy and this and that. So when you have like a good amount, a wonderful formula, usually you should go with it, you know what I mean? Or else it will get overwhelming and annoying real fast. So that's one thing that I wanted to talk about. In Mario Kart World, Nintendo changed the formula that makes Mario Kart unique and fun in favor of new additions. Instead of having a 3-lap system, or, depending on the size of the track, they add more laps. For example, I forget which it was, the baby park, I think it's called, where it's like 8 times you have to go around in an oval or something like that. So they instead connect tracks to intermissions, turn it all into one continuous race. So you have your main race, say like Bowser's Castle, then intermission, you have to race again, and then boom, Rainbow Road or something like that. You know what I mean? So in my opinion, and plus throughout the intermissions, I played the game. It's been a while since I played on my friend's Switch 2, but from what I remember is everything that happens within that intermission affects overall. Like for example, you could be amazing in the races, you could dominate in all, but if you suck in that intermission or people all ganging on you in that intermission, then that could change overall results, and I think that is annoying, you know what I mean? So I think that should have been like a side mode, which I think that's a part of the main game. So that's another thing that I wanted to talk about. Now I overall I don't like this, like don't get me wrong, I could see why some people enjoy the changes, something fresh, new ideas coming in the series, in the franchise. So cool, if you enjoy it, nice. But me personally, I prefer the classic way. Next is, now I want to add a side personal statement, some of the characters, now this is never mind. This is this one. So long story short, right? Now, everything, this is an opinion-based video, of course, how I feel about the game and stuff like that. So, you probably love it 100%. I have no issues, you know what I mean? Like, you do you, I do me. But in my opinion, long story short, the characters look fucking ugly. Okay, Donkey Kong looks ugly just like his game that's upcoming. I don't like it. It's like they took the ugliness from the Mario movie 2021 or whatever the hell that that year of the game, the movie came out, and then they put it in this game. The character designs, I prefer Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Now, one thing I would say is, dude, they look like, one thing that I would say that is positive of them is they kind of remind me of that fan-made like art, that people do online. So, hey man, that's pretty cool. I've seen better character designs made by fans in fan-made Mario Kart games. So, hey man, keep doing your thing, fans. Keep making those Mario Kart fan-made games, y'all. Have fun. And hopefully Nintendo don't catch you. But yeah, that's just a side thing I wanted to add. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is my feelings towards Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and comparing it to this game as well. So one thing I want to talk about is my feelings towards Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and its story. Now, its story, I'm also then going to compare it to Mario Kart World as well. So, Mario Kart 8 or 8/Deluxe has a story similar to Street Fighter 5, from Capcom. A game that released, it had its issues, they adapted, they enhanced it, they released it or evolved it, and boom, it's a success story before the new game released in this series. Now, when it comes down to Mario Kart 8, Mario Kart 8, it was a fun game. It was released on the Wii U. That's one hit. Then, they had a DLC. Cool, that's great. And, we know how that story went, Then Nintendo was like, let's put on the Switch. They took Mario Kart 8, called it Deluxe, added the DLC on the Wii U for free. Later on, they had new DLC, which includes classic beloved fan, the beloved tracks that fans love and know from other Mario Kart games like Mario Kart Double Dash, Super Mario Kart from the original, etc. With the Wii, and then they remastered it for the Nintendo Switch and all that stuff. So right there, you have Nintendo. They took this game Mario Kart 8, called it Deluxe, all the DLC free, added more DLC for fans that are old and new to connect the generations. Now it's amazing, cool. I believe it's the most sold. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe was the most sold game on the Nintendo Switch. I think that was the case, so I may be wrong on that, but I think I heard somewhere that it was. So it has history, is what I'm trying to say. You know what I mean? Similar to how Street Fighter 5 does. So when it comes down to Mario Kart World, Nintendo, instead of being like, hey yo, fan positivity, let's go, let's have fun. Nah, man. They put a $80 price tag on a game with lower qualities than a PS5, which released 5 years earlier than it. And yeah, now, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm probably being really generous towards Nintendo, okay? But the Nintendo Switch 2, I think its power is similar to a base PS4, or maybe not. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. But, hey man, come on. Look at the graphics on the PS4, man. They still coming out with games that look really cool and amazing on that console. And Nintendo still, yeah. I feel like when it comes down to it, Nintendo kind of, they kind of had a, ego, they're coming out from the Wii. Coming out from the Switch, They went from the Switch, they were like, we're successful, let's go to the Switch too. And they had such an ego that it hurt them. They really did. They're coming out with $80 plus tax games, a console that's not that bad, and stuff like that. And don't get me wrong, I'm going to give a positive towards Nintendo. If we do inflation and all of that, back then a game was maybe $70. It's probably going to be 200 and something. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm bad with the inflation numbers. Something from $200 in 1990 compared to now. You know what I mean? It's going to be way more, probably in the 800 range now. So might be wrong on that, but just to give you an idea, it's not as bad if you look into it a business way, like inflation and all that stuff. But overall, it just, you know what I mean? Not to get too controversial and stuff, but we know what's going on these days and prices. So all I'm gonna say is, oh man, it was a little weird. One thing that I would say though is, both Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and Mario Kart World are, they have its own unique fun gimmicks. So that's a cool thing that I would say, to them. Some people maybe aren't full into the gimmick stuff, but still trying to stay positive somewhat. But when it comes down to Mario Kart World, I feel like it doesn't hit as well as Mario Kart 8 Deluxe did. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, in my opinion, with all its DLC at the end, comparing the full game, or even before the DLC, right? Let's cut off the DLC for a bit, right? On the Switch. It's Mario Kart 8 Deluxe as a game. I personally feel it's like more fun and stuff. And, I think when it comes down to it, the base game has to be the most important thing before the DLC, If the base game is really amazing and fun, I don't care if they have a DLC or not. Like, I'm not over here saying, games shouldn't have a DLC. Like, hell, I would say it enhances the game, makes it more cooler. Look at Tekken 8, you have the base game, it's really amazing, cool. They added DLC, they made it even better and cooler. They have Heihachi and stuff. So I'm not against DLC. My issue is when these companies release these games and then the DLC either lacks, or when you release a game and the base game it's not as cool as the previous one, and it kind of lacks in that way. And overall, I would say, I think when it comes down to Mario Kart World, they kind of had a big ego, and they kind of, specific things which I mentioned throughout this video, it kind of adds up, and it just got to that point where it's like, okay, I think I'm good. You know what I mean? Now, I got a little small side thing to share, like a thought. Maybe Mario Kart Tour, or maybe Mario Kart World, is not Mario Kart 9. It's supposed to be a side game to the series. I feel like that's the case, but it's not announced yet officially. And in the future, they plan to have something really cool and amazing for Mario Kart 9. Now, that's just my predictions. It probably is a mainline game, but I would like to think it's a side game. You know what I mean? Like, hey, yo, this is a side game, boom, whatever. Next gen, they're gonna have Mario Kart 9. If that's the case, then okay, fine, you're a side game. You did your thing. Now, let's just get lost. Hopefully, Mario Kart 9 is gonna be something cool. But I would also say this: this is the big issue with Nintendo and modern gaming as a whole, is that a lot of companies are more focused on remakes, remasters, and stuff like that. Boom, 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 boom. And when it comes down to creating the next new big title, they fall off. They rely on things that's already successful, that's already added in previous games, and it just doesn't feel like a whole new thing, or it just feels like it's lacking of. They're so focused on remakes and remasters that when it comes down to performing a whole new experience, they think they have the idea of what works, probably what but this whole time they're doing remakes and remasters, so they kind of relying on the past stuff to be like, okay, we know what works, but no, a lot of things evolved by then, and we just want a whole new thing. So I feel like this is one of the examples of Nintendo kind of messed up here, right? They should have made the Switch Mario Kart 9 console, and then the Switch 2 a new console, and for these, and have like side games, you know what I mean, like, or side DLC stories. That's what it should have been, so they could focus more on the next titles, the next new ideas, set of ideas, because let's be honest, right? There's no excuse for Mario Kart World at all, to be how it is, the condition in modern times, because you had an entire generation to rework and basically come up with a whole new game. The Mario Kart, look, I understand, the Wii U and Switch versions of Mario Kart 8, it's different, you know what I mean, all that, I explained that, but, imagine if we just went from Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U to this one, you know what I mean? I feel like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is going to be a wonderful game, and a game a lot of people's going to still be going hard for. Now, Mario Kart World wise, I don't know, I hope that they, learn from their mistakes. Maybe they have DLC that makes it even more unique and wonderful, and they're just like, you know what I mean? Something really cool and perfection. So hopefully they really turn this into something wow and drop that price tag. And also be just perfect, But how it is now, I kind of feel like it kind of lost its charm. You know what I mean? So yeah. The last thing I want to say is Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is a crossover game like Super Smash Bros. But Mario Kart World is an overpriced game that has lower qualities than 5-year-old gaming consoles like the Sony PlayStation 5. At least Nintendo has the right idea of making exclusives unlike Sony, but in a way, in that way Nintendo's winning. They have their exclusives all to themselves. But yeah, that's just how I feel. I do hope that Nintendo, creates a lot of great things, Although Mario Kart, World is a little disappointing in my opinion. I feel like, and I hope that, they learn from this, and upcoming games on the Nintendo Switch 2 are really great, amazing, and wonderful, because I know they are capable of making fun, amazing games. They have done it and showed it on the Nintendo Switch 1, especially last year. Great, wonderful first-party games. So I hope that this is just a little bit of a, side stumble. Maybe they fell a little, but they're gonna get back up and keep going at it. And when I see that they're going to, improve, make amazing games, that's when I'm going to get my Switch 2. And plus a colored Switch or a special edition. So yeah, because basic black and gray and, it's just, I like colored consoles, I'm going to wait for that. But that's just all rambling personal stuff for me. So after talking about why Mario Kart World will always be in the shadow of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Until next time.